Hello, I'm Rabbi Elton from the Great Synagogue in Sydney, and welcome to From the Rabbi's Bookshelves. Our book today is a classic in the true sense. It's the Midrash Rabba, and it's one of the foundational texts of Rabbinic Judaism. Rabbinic writings are divided into two main categories. There is halacha, there is Jewish law, and investigations into what we ought and ought not to do. But there's also agadah, which is the homiletical interpretations of principally texts in the Torah and other parts of the Hebrew Bible. Agadah is the same word as Haggadah, which we know from Seder night on the first and second nights of Pesach, because it's about delving into and exploring the stories which we find in the Torah. Now, in Babylon, which was the more significant and important area of Jewish study after the destruction of the Second Temple, we find both halachic and Aggadic material in the same place, in the Babylonian Talmud. But in the land of Israel, which although it was more prestigious because of its place in the world, was nevertheless the poorer Jewish centre, this activity was split into two different volumes. The Jerusalem Talmud, the Talmud of the land of Israel, contains almost entirely halachic material, just legal material. And they put all their homiletical material, their Aggadic elements, into a separate series of volumes, which includes the Midrash Rabba. Midrash is the same word as drashah. These are like sermons, essentially. My volumes are in three parts and cover the whole of the Torah and parts of the rest of the Hebrew Bible. As well as the Midrash Rabba, you've also got other elements of the Midrashic corpus, Tanchuma, and other elements as well. But the Midrash Rabba is the most significant part. Now, many of the stories that some people think are in the Torah itself, in fact, only appear in the Midrash, but they become so woven into our understanding of the way that the stories of the Torah work out that we can sometimes forget which is in the Torah itself and which is in the Midrash, which is a rabbinic interpolation and extrapolation from the actual biblical text. Now, these are primarily stories, not only stories, but primarily stories, but they're in fact works of theology. The rabbis express their theological views by putting them in through the means of a story, and we have to work out what the story means. It's a parable which leads to a conclusion, a mashal which leads to a nimshal, but the nimshal, the understanding, the explanation, is something we have to work out for ourselves. So let me give you a very famous mashal, and we'll try and work on the nimshal. We'll try and work on what the story actually means. If you think back to the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, it says that God spoke to Abraham, Lech lecha, go, leave your home, leave your family's house. There's no backstory. There's no reason given in the text of the Torah why it should be that God should speak to Abraham of all the people in the world. And so the rabbis, abhorring a vacuum, they give us some of this backstory. And here's one example of a backstory. There are several, but here's one, which is more philosophical in nature. Let me give you a bit of the structure of the way the Midrash works, first of all. So it, first of all, quotes the text in the Torah that is under discussion. The Midrash begins, Vayom Hashem el Avram, lech lecha me'artzecha. God said to Avraham, his name is not yet Avraham, but Avram, go from your country, etc. So it begins with a verse it's going to expound. And then it takes a verse from some totally different part of the Bible, which has some connection, but not an obvious connection in strict literal terms. And it says, Rabbi Yitzchak Pasach, Rabbi Yitzchak began his sermon by saying this. He quoted another verse, a verse in the book of Psalms, Psalm 45, verse 11. Shimi vas uri vati oznech, and listen, daughter, and look and incline your ear. Veshechi amech uveis avich, and abandon your people and the house of your father. So a similar idea of abandoning one's home environment. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, and he said a parable, a mashal. Le'echad shehaya over mimakam lemakam. There was a person travelling from place to place. V'ra'ah bira achas dolekes, and he saw a castle that was on fire. Amar tomar shabira hazo below manhig. He said, could it be possible that this castle has no owner? Heitzitz alav bal habira. At that point, the owner of the castle popped his head out. Amar lo anihu bal habira. He said, I am the owner of this castle. Kach lefi shehaya Avinu Avraham omer tomar she'olam hazeh below manhig. Similarly, our ancestor Abraham said, could it be that this world has no owner? Heitzitz alav HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'amar lo anihu bal ha'olam. At that point, God, as it were, poked his head out and said, I am the master of the universe. I am the God of the world. So why was Abraham chosen as the person to hear the message, Lech Lecha, leave your father's house and go to the land of Canaan, which became the land of Israel later? Because just like a person wandering from place to place and seeing a castle and saying a castle must have an owner, Abraham saw the world and said the world must have an owner as well. A kind of argument from design. How can it be that this complicated and beautiful world has no owner? But there's more than that. It's not just an argument from design, because the castle is on fire. Why this element of the castle being on fire? Abraham sees the injustice in the world, the suffering in the world, and yet still intuits that there is an owner. That's why the castle is on fire. Abraham sees the world on fire. He sees the world suffering, but he also sees the world in its beauty and its complexity. And therefore he sees that there must be an owner, there must be a designer for this designed world, but also that he has a moral obligation to, as it were, put out the fire. He's prompted not only by philosophical speculation, but also by a moral imperative. It's his job to put out the fire in the world, to end the suffering which he sees around him. And so a simple mashal, a simple story, gives you two important philosophical ideas of the rabbis. Now, these ideas are not binding. Unlike the halachic material in the corpus of the rabbinic work, you don't have to take any of these literally or accept any of these as absolutely binding. These are homiletical ideas which the rabbis share from their own ideas and their own sources of wisdom, and they are part of the rich makeup of our tradition, but they're not authoritative in the same way as halachic statements are authoritative. They're there to enrich and deepen our understanding of our sacred texts. Thanks for joining.